Hello, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today as we take a look at the life and career of, quote, the sexiest man alive, the one and only, Ravishing Rick Rude. As a child, I despised Ravishing Rick Rude, who played the role of a villain in wrestling. He was incredibly irritating, always boasting about his physical appearance and relying on his manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan, to defeat formidable opponents. It is understood that being exceptional in the wrestling ring is a given, but not every superstar possesses the ability to effectively engage with the audience and establish a distinctive persona by using a microphone. However, Ravishing Rick Rude not only had these skills, but he also excelled at them. Rude is likely to be most well known for his tenure in WWE during the late 1980s, which can be considered the pinnacle of his career. As a part of the notorious Heenan family, Rude gained fame for his pre-match speeches where he would typically mock the audience. With Bobby Heenan by his side, the duo managed to form one of the most seamless alliances ever witnessed in WWE, a pairing that has rarely been matched. After winning a match, Rude would frequently select a young female fan from the audience and surprise her with a passionate kiss. In doing so, he presented himself as a desirable figure for women. Looking back now, after many years, I have developed a deep respect for him and an immense admiration for his career. Rude participated in professional wrestling from 1982 until he retired in 1994 due to an injury, with his final match taking place in 1997. Throughout his career, he achieved numerous accomplishments, including being a four-time world champion, a three-time WCW International World Heavyweight Champion, one-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, one-time WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, and a one-time WCW United States Heavyweight Champion. Rude also had opportunities to challenge for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship and the NWO World Heavyweight Championship on pay-per-view events, notably headlining SummerSlam in 1990 for the former. Following his retirement from wrestling, Rude transitioned into managing multiple wrestlers. In late 1997, Rude founded the Degeneration X stable alongside Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chyna. On November 17th of that year, in the midst of the Monday Night Wars, he became the only person to appear on the WWF's Raw and WCW's Monday Nitro programs on the same night, as the former was pre-recorded and Rude had left for WCW in the interim. He was posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2017. Rude was brought into the world in St. Peter, Minnesota to Richard Clyde Rude and Sally Jean Thompson. He studied at Robbinsdale High School in Robbinsdale, Minnesota alongside Tom Zink, Brady Boone, Nikita Koloff, Kurt Hennig, John Nord, and Barry Darsow, all of whom would later pursue careers as wrestlers. He shared a particularly strong bond with his childhood companion Kurt Hennig. After completing his studies in physical education at Anoka Ramsey Community College, Rude briefly worked as a bouncer before giving arm wrestling a try. It was during this time that he gained recognition in the world of professional wrestling. Rude received training as a wrestler from Eddie Sharkey, who was also responsible for training notable wrestling talents such as Bob Backlund, the Road Warriors, Sean Waldman, Austin Aries, and Eric Rowan. In 1982, he entered the world of wrestling under the name Ricky Rude, working as a good guy jobber. His first appearance on television didn't go well, as he lost to Joss LeDuc on the November 6, 1982 episode of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. After his time in Vancouver's NWA All-Star Wrestling, he went on to compete in Georgia Championship Wrestling and then in the Continental Wrestling Association based in Memphis. Rude made his first appearance on the May 28, 1983 episode of World Championship Wrestling, where he defeated Pat Rose using a dropkick. The following week, Rude was interviewed by Gordon Solie, during which he talked about his transition from arm wrestling to professional wrestling and how he had to lose weight in order to improve his speed. In 1984, Rude returned to Memphis with a new persona as Ravishing Rick Rude, a cocky and arrogant villain managed by Jimmy Hart. He engaged in feuds with Jerry Lawler and later his former tag team partner, King Kong Bundy. Rude also had a match in WCCW against Kamala, which he unfortunately lost. He then moved on to Jim Crockett Promotions, an affiliate of the National Wrestling Alliance, where he teamed up with various partners to feud with the Road Warriors. Rude was brought on board by Championship Wrestling from Florida in December 1984, with Percy Pringle serving as his manager. On January 16, 1985, he emerged victorious over Pez Whatley to claim the NWA Florida Southern Heavyweight Championship. However, his reign was short-lived as he surrendered the title to Brian Blair on April 10, 1985. Undeterred, Rude regained the championship on July 20, 1985, after defeating Mike Graham in the finals of a Southern title tournament. He held on to the championship belt until October 2nd of the following year, when he gave it up to Wahoo McDaniel. McDaniel was responsible for organizing events in Florida at that specific time. On April 16, 1985, he and Jesse Barr emerged victorious in the NWA Florida United States Tag Team Championship. They faced off against Billy Jack Haynes and Wahoo McDaniel in intense rivalries for the titles. However, they eventually lost the championship belts to McDaniel and Haynes on July 9, 1985. In October 1985, Rude made his debut in World Class Championship Wrestling alongside Pringle. There, he engaged in rivalries with Kevin Von Erich and Chris Adams. During his tenure in WCCW, Rude achieved success by winning the NWA American Heavyweight Championship on November 4, 1985. However, on February 20, 1986, WCCW decided to separate from the NWA and rebranded itself as the World Class Wrestling Association. The WCW World Heavyweight Championship was given a new name, the NWA American Championship, while Rude was still the title holder. This made Rude the first world champion in the promotion. In July 1986, he lost the title to Chris Adams and subsequently dismissed Pringle as his manager. For a brief period, he enlisted his sister, Raven, as his replacement manager. Rude formed a tag team with the Dingo Warrior, but their partnership was short-lived as the Warrior betrayed him and turned into a fan favorite. In September 1986, Rude made his return to Jim Crockett Promotions and teamed up with Manny Fernandez and their manager Paul Jones to feud with Wahoo McDaniel. Rude and Fernandez, collectively known as the Awesome Twosome, captured the NWA World Tag Team Championship on December 6, 1986 by defeating the Rock and Roll Express. This victory sparked a heated rivalry between the two teams, which only came to an end when Rude departed for the World Wrestling Federation in April 1987. I hope you are enjoying the video. If I could just ask, do you think Rick Rude was a big player in wrestling? If you think he was, then hit the subscribe button to show me how many of you think he was. It lets me know whether to do more content like this or not. Let's get back to it now. On July 15, 1987, Rude made his World Wrestling Federation debut as the newest member of the Bobby Heenan family on Superstars of Wrestling. Rude's first significant rivalry in the WWF ended on November 24 at Madison Square Garden when he defeated Heenan's erstwhile muscle-bound charge, Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, whom Heenan had dropped after Rude joined the family. On January 9, 1988, he would challenge Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship in the Boston Garden. He would lose the match, but it would set off one of his most well-known feuds with Jake, the Snake, Roberts. Before every match, Rude would mock the men in the crowd by taking off his robe, probably as a parody of Austin Idol's disrobing routine, and calling them fat, out-of-shape sweathogs from their hometowns. After each win, he would kiss a woman that Heenan had picked out of the crowd. Rude's specifically airbrushed tights, which he wore during matches, were one of his distinguishing features. Rude attempted to get Cheryl, who is Jake Roberts' real-life wife, involved in the Roberts angle, despite the fact that she was unaware of Roberts' marital status at the time of Heenan's selection. Rude got upset after Mrs. Roberts smacked him and, according to Jake, busted his eardrum, after she rejected him and told him who she was coming to visit. When Roberts hurried out of the dressing room to attempt the rescue, Rude grabbed her wrist and scolded her over the microphone. Rude entered the ring wearing tights with a stencil of Cheryl's picture on the front. Black spots censoring Rude's genital area gave the impression that he was naked, but the live audience saw him undressed down to a G-string. An enraged Roberts charged the ring and stripped Rude. Rude wore an additional pair of tights underneath his ring tights until the middle of 1988, including during his match at the first SummerSlam versus the Junkyard Dog. Rude had climbed to the top turnbuckle and carried the JYD on his back during the match. Up there, he undid his tights to show off a second pair that bore Cheryl Roberts' image. Roberts, who had witnessed the incident from the dressing room, attacked him when he struck the dog with a flying punch. Rude won because of Roberts' attack on him, disqualifying the JYD. On October 24th, at Madison Square Garden, Rude Awakening vs. DDT ended in a loss to Roberts. Rude and Roberts' rivalry ended when Roberts pinned Rude in the 1988 Survivor Series after hitting Rude with a DDT. Rude's subsequent major rivalry started in January 1989 at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, where the two engaged in a superpose down that culminated with Rude striking Warrior with a metal posture bar. Rude defeated the Ultimate Warrior for the WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 5 with Heenan's assistance. However, Rude lost the title to Warrior at SummerSlam of same year, mostly because of Rowdy Roddy Piper's meddling. Rude then feuded with Piper, resulting in a clash between their respective teams at the 1989 Survivor Series, in which both men brawled to a double countout. Rude would go on to have many matches with Piper, including one inside a steel cage on December 28th at Madison Square Garden, losing the bulk of them, before briefly facing Jimmy Snuka and defeating him at WrestleMania 6. Rude restarted his feud with the Ultimate Warrior in the summer of 1990, when Warrior won the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. Rude began hard training in preparation for the Warrior, taking a more serious approach that included ignoring women and cutting his hair short. The feud culminated in a steel cage at SummerSlam 1990, wherein Rude was defeated by the Warrior. Next, he was set to quarrel with Big Boss Man, which began when Rude's manager Bobby Heenan began making disparaging remarks about Boss Man's mother. Rude was supposed to be on the Natural Disasters team at the Survivor Series, competing against Hulk Hogan and Boss Man's squad, but he was replaced by Haku after Jack Tunney had suspended him indefinitely. Tunney revealed that Rude's words about the Boss Man were the basis for his suspension, and that his manager, Bobby Heenan, was required to wrestle the Boss Man in his place. Rude actually left WWF due to a disagreement with owner Vince McMahon. After leaving the WWF, Rude tried to join Herb Abrams' UWF. Rude was still under contract with the WWF when his former company issued a cease and desist order, preventing him from appearing on UWF television. He did not wrestle again until May 18, 1991, when he competed in the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance's TWA Spring Spectacular 2 event in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He lost to Paul Orndorff via disqualification. 2 months later, he joined All Japan Pro Wrestling's Summer Action Series 1991, making his debut on July 6, 1991, during a show in Yokosuka, Japan. In his first match on the tour, he and Johnny Ace defeated Billy Black and Joel Deaton. Rude went undefeated in singles matches, defeating Isamu Teranishi and Akira Taw. His final appearance was on July 19th, when he teamed up with Johnny Ace to lose against Dan Spivey and Stan Hansen. Rude also competed in International World Class Championship Wrestling, IWCCW, where he faced off with the Honky Tonk Man. After a year of wrestling on select independent circuit shows, as well as a July 1991 tour for All Japan Pro Wrestling, Rude returned to WCW, which had previously been Jim Crockett Promotions before being sold to Ted Turner in late 1988. He returned as the WCW Phantom at Halloween Havoc on October 27, 1991, and unmasked himself later that night. He led the Dangerous Alliance, which included himself, Paulie Dangerously, Medusa, Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Larry Zabrisco, and Stunning Steve Austin. Rude defeated Sting for the United States Heavyweight Championship on November 19, 1991, and went on to have other high-profile feuds, including one with Ricky Steamboat. Rude and Medusa departed the Dangerous Alliance in 1992, sparking a conflict with Nikita Koloff. Rude challenged reigning World Heavyweight Champion Ron Simmons on multiple occasions, but was unable to win the belt. In December 1992, Rude sustained a serious neck injury and was forced to relinquish the United States Championship, therefore ending his reign of over 14 months. Rude returned alone in April 1993 and attempted to recapture the title from Dustin Rhodes. After a 30-minute Iron Man encounter ended in a 1-1 draw on July 18th, The two were due to face off in a best-of-3 series on Saturday night. Rude won the first encounter on August 28th, but fell to Rhodes twice on September 4th and 11th, ending his chances of regaining the United States Heavyweight Championship. Rude shifted his focus to the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, announcing his intentions on August 28, 1993, as a guest on then-champion Ric Flair's A Flair for the Gold talk show. In September 1993, Rude defeated Flair to win the title at Fall Brawl. WCW lost the rights to use the NWA World Heavyweight Championship once it withdrew from the NWA. WCW established its own belt, the WCW International World Heavyweight Belt, which Rude lost to Hiroshi Hayes on March 16, 1994, in Tokyo, Japan. Rude reclaimed the championship just 8 days later, in Kyoto, Japan. After losing the title to Sting on April 17th at Spring Stampede, Rude pinned him on May 1st at Wrestling Dontaku in Fukuoka to become a 3-time champion. Rude, on the other hand, injured his back during the match when he landed on the corner of the raised platform surrounding the ring after receiving a suicide dive at ringside. Unable to wrestle, he was stripped of the title, with the storyline excuse that he used the title belt as a weapon during the match. Rude retired shortly afterward. Rude collected on a Lloyd's of London insurance policy and did not wrestle again until January 1997, when he joined Extreme Championship Wrestling as a masked man. Rude made his debut at House Party, claiming that his New Year's resolution was to fuck with the franchise, Shane Douglas. Rude went on to harass Douglas, spanking his valet Francine during crossing the line again. He eventually unmasked and became a color commentator, before briefly aligning himself with Douglas and his Triple Threat stable. Rude made a one-time comeback to the ring in the main event at ECW Heatwave 1997 in a 6-man tag team match, teaming up with ECW mainstays Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman to face Jerry Lawler and ECW stars Rob Van Dam and Sabu, only to turn on Dreamer and the Sandman. Rude assisted Lawler in defeating Dreamer and the Sandman during the ECW vs. USWA/WWF intercompany competition. Rude returned to the WWF on August 11, 1997, as the insurance policy of the group known as Degeneration X, which consisted of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chyna. The term Degeneration X was first used on October 13, 1997. Rude never wrestled while a member of DX, although he was always ringside throughout the group's matches. Rude left the WWF a few days later, following the Montreal Screwjob at Survivor Series. According to Bret Hart, Rude remained in the locker room during Bret's meeting with Vince McMahon following the bout in Montreal, and later called Eric Bischoff to inform him that what had happened was real. Rude was not contracted to a full-time contract with the WWF and instead worked on a pay-per-appearance basis. Rude was able to reach an agreement with Bischoff and WCW, thanks in large part to his outrage at the Montreal Screwjob. Rude appeared on both Raw is War with the WWF and WCW Monday Nitro on the same night in November 17, 1997. A mustached Rude went on Nitro, which was live, and began to criticize Vince McMahon, Shawn Michaels, DX, and the WWF, calling the organization the Titanic, a reference to Titan Sports, the WWF's parent corporation at the time, as the sinking ship. Rude arrived an hour later on Raw is War, which had been taped 6 days earlier, with the full beard he had been sporting during his final weeks in the WWF. Rude also featured on ECW's Hardcore TV over the weekend. Rude continued to make ECW appearances while in Degeneration X, since the WWF and ECW frequently collaborated. Rude joined the NWO and managed his pal Curt Hennig. Rude became the first wrestler to represent both DX and NWO. When the NWO split, Hennig and Rude initially supported the NWO Wolfpack in May 1998. However, their tenure with Red and Black was limited. At the Great American Bash, they attacked fellow Wolfpack member Conan after he lost to the undefeated Goldberg, prompting Hennig and Rude to join NWO Hollywood instead. Rude and Hennig were both forced to leave WCW in late 1998 due to injuries. Hennig had a leg injury and Rude was assumed to have testicular cancer, but it was subsequently discovered to be a spermatocele. Hennig returned to the NWO following his injury at Starrcade, But Rude was still unable to appear and was not featured in the NWO reunion in January 1999. Rude officially left WCW in April 1999, and his last appearance was on the April 5, 1999 episode of WCW Monday Nitro, Backstage Blast. Unfortunately, this would mark the end of Ravishing Rick Rude's career, as sadly his wife would discover him unresponsive, and he died of heart failure on April 20, 1999, at the age of 40, just weeks after his last television appearance. According to the autopsy report, he died from an overdose of mixed medications. Rude was preparing to return to the ring when he died. The effects of gamma-hydroxybutyrate, a narcolepsy preventive medicine, could have contributed to his death. Bret Hart has revealed that, despite his womanizing Ravishing One reputation, Rude was a committed family man who never removed his wedding band before matches, instead covering it with tape during any wrestling match he had. Rick Rude's induction into the WWE Hall of Fame was announced on March 6, 2017. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat welcomed Rude. Michelle, Marissa, and Richard Jr. accepted on his behalf. Well, it's that time again where we have to say goodbye.
Hello there, wrestling fans, and welcome to the channel. I hope you are all doing fine and having a great day. I hope you've been keeping well, and let's get right into the video. Rodney Anoa'i was born into a family deeply rooted in professional wrestling. He was trained by his uncles, Afa and Sika, known as the Wild Samoans, who were also WWE Hall of Famers. Rodney initially wrestled under the ring names Hakina Maximus and the Great Kakina in the American Wrestling Association and various other promotions. Rodney grew up in a household where wrestling was more than just entertainment, it was a way of life. His uncles, Afa and Sika Anoa'i, better known as the Wild Samoans, were already established stars in the professional wrestling world. They were known for their fierce and intimidating in-ring personas, and they passed on their knowledge and passion for the business to their nephew. From a young age, Rodney was surrounded by wrestling culture. He witnessed firsthand the hard work, dedication, and rigorous training that professional wrestling demanded. The close-knit nature of the Anoa'i family meant that Rodney was not only influenced by his uncles but also by other family members who were involved in wrestling, including his cousin Samu, Rikishi, and later, future stars like The Rock and Roman Reigns. Under the guidance of his uncles, Rodney began his wrestling training in the early 1980s. His training was intense, focusing on the fundamentals of wrestling, in-ring psychology, and character development. Despite his large size, Rodney was remarkably agile, and he quickly showed promise as a wrestler. Rodney's early career saw him wrestling under various ring names, the most notable being Kakina Maximus and the Great Kakina. He initially worked in independent promotions across the United States and abroad. In these early days, Rodney's character was more aligned with his Samoan heritage, often portraying a savage wildman character like the personas his uncles had perfected. During this period, Rodney also spent time wrestling in Japan, where he further honed his skills and gained valuable international experience. Wrestling in Japan was a significant step in his early career, as it exposed him to a different style of wrestling, known as pure array, which emphasized strong strikes, submission holds, and a high level of athleticism. This experience would later influence his in-ring style, even after his character was rebranded. In the early 1990s, Rodney's uncles, Afa and Sika, used their connections in the wrestling industry to help him secure a tryout with the World Wrestling Federation. Recognizing his immense potential and unique look, the WWF decided to sign Rodney, but they had a different vision for his character. Upon joining the WWF in 1992, Rodney was given the ring name Yokozuna and repackaged as a Japanese sumo wrestler. Despite being of Samoan descent, the WWF marketed him as a sumo champion from Japan, capitalizing on his massive size and the exotic allure of sumo wrestling to American audiences. Managed by Mr. Fuji, who played the role of a traditional Japanese manager, Yokozuna was introduced as an unstoppable force. embodying the discipline and power of a sumo wrestler. Yokozuna's rise to fame in the World Wrestling Federation was meteoric and marked by several significant milestones that established him as one of the top stars of the early 1990s. His unique character, combined with his massive size and athleticism, made him a dominant force in the ring and a compelling attraction for wrestling fans. Yokozuna debuted in the WWF on the October 31, 1992, episode of Superstars. From the outset, Yokozuna was presented as an unstoppable force. Weighing over 500 pounds, he used his size and power to overwhelm his opponents, often finishing them off with his signature move, the Banzai Drop, a devastating maneuver where he would climb the ropes and sit down onto his prone opponent. Yokozuna's rise was carefully orchestrated by the WWF. He was undefeated in his early matches, quickly establishing himself as a top heel in the company. His dominance in the ring was accentuated by his sumo wrestler persona, which added an air of legitimacy and exotica to his character, making him stand out among the other wrestlers of the time. Yokozuna's ascent to the top of the WWF began in earnest at the 1993 Royal Rumble, one of the company's biggest annual events. The Royal Rumble match is a battle royal featuring 30 wrestlers, with the winner earning a shot at the WWF Championship at WrestleMania, the company's flagship event. Yokozuna entered the match as one of the favorites, given his undefeated streak and the momentum he had built since his debut. He entered the Rumble as the 27th participant, using his size and strength to eliminate several competitors. In the final moments of the match, Yokozuna faced off against Macho Man Randy Savage, a former WWF champion and one of the company's biggest stars. After a brief exchange, Yokozuna caught Savage in midair and eliminated him to win the match. This victory earned Yokozuna a title shot at WrestleMania 9. Yokozuna's victory at the Royal Rumble set the stage for his first WWF Championship match, which took place at WrestleMania 9 on April 4, 1993, at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada. His opponent was Bret the Hitman Hart, the reigning WWF champion and one of the most popular and technically skilled wrestlers in the company. The match between Yokozuna and Hart was a classic David vs. Goliath story, with the smaller, more agile Hart attempting to outmaneuver the much larger Yokozuna. Despite Hart's best efforts, Yokozuna's size and power proved too much. In the closing moments of the match, Mr. Fuji threw salt into Hart's eyes, blinding him and allowing Yokozuna to pin Hart and win the WWF Championship. With this victory, Yokozuna became the first wrestler of Samoan descent to win the WWF Championship, though his character was still presented as Japanese. However, Yokozuna's celebration was short-lived. Immediately after the match, Hulk Hogan, one of the biggest stars in wrestling history, came to the ring to protest the injustice of Fuji's interference. Fuji, overconfident in Yokozuna's abilities, challenged Hogan to an impromptu title match. In a shocking turn of events, Hogan quickly defeated Yokozuna to win the WWF Championship, marking one of the shortest reigns in WWF history. Despite the setback, Yokozuna's status as a top star was cemented, and he remained a dominant force in the company. Yokozuna quickly rebounded from his loss to Hogan. Throughout the spring and summer of 1993, he continued to be booked as an unstoppable monster, defeating many of the WWF's top stars. His dominant run led to a rematch with Hulk Hogan at the King of the Ring event on June 13, 1993. This time, Yokozuna was victorious, regaining the WWF Championship after Mr. Fuji and a Japanese photographer who turned out to be a plant blinded Hogan with a fireball. This victory marked the end of Hogan's run in the WWF, as he would leave the company shortly after. With Hogan out of the picture, Yokozuna was positioned as the top heel champion in the WWF. He embarked on a lengthy title reign, during which he faced and defeated several of the company's biggest names, including Lex Luger, The Undertaker, and Bret Hart. Yokozuna's reign was characterized by his dominance in the ring and his ability to squash his opponents with his massive size. One of the most memorable moments of Yokozuna's title reign was his feud with Lex Luger, which began in the summer of 1993. It all kicked off on July 4 when Yokozuna held a body slam challenge aboard the USS Intrepid, a decommissioned aircraft carrier. The challenge was simple. Any wrestler or athlete who could body slam Yokozuna would earn a title shot. Several athletes and other wrestlers attempted to slam Yokozuna but failed due to his immense size. Just as it seemed no one could succeed, Lex Luger arrived by helicopter, accepted the challenge, and successfully body slammed Yokozuna. turning Luger into an American hero and setting the stage for a major title match at SummerSlam '93. At SummerSlam, Luger challenged Yokozuna for the WWF Championship, but the match ended in a countout, allowing Yokozuna to retain the title. This finish was controversial and kept the feud alive, with Luger continuing to chase the championship. Yokozuna's reign as WWF champion continued into 1994, making him one of the longest-reigning champions of the era. His dominance was finally challenged at WrestleMania 10, held on March 20, 1994, at Madison Square Garden. At the event, Yokozuna was forced to defend the WWF Championship twice in one night. In his first match, Yokozuna defeated Lex Luger by disqualification, retaining the title. However, in the main event, he faced Bret Hart, who had earned the right to challenge for the title after winning a coin toss earlier in the evening. Despite Yokozuna's best efforts, Hart managed to outlast the champion. In the closing moments of the match, Yokozuna lost his balance while attempting a bonsai drop, allowing Hart to capitalize and pin him to win the WWF Championship. After losing the WWF Championship, Yokozuna remained a top star in the WWF, but his weight and declining mobility began to affect his in-ring performance. He continued to be a formidable competitor and even formed a successful tag team with Owen Hart, with whom he won the WWF Tag Team Championship twice. However, by the mid-1990s, his role in the company had diminished, and he was eventually phased out of the main event scene. Yokozuna's rise to fame in the WWF was characterized by his rapid ascent to the top of the wrestling world and his dominance as a champion. His unique character, combined with his physical presence and in-ring ability, made him one of the most memorable and feared wrestlers of his era. Despite his relatively short career, Yokozuna left an indelible mark on professional wrestling and remains a legendary figure in the history of the sport. Yokozuna's career in the WWF was marked by several notable feuds and partnerships that helped define his character and solidify his place as one of the top heels of his era. These feuds often pitted him against some of the biggest stars in the company, while his partnerships, particularly with Owen Hart, showcased his versatility as a performer. Yokozuna's feud with The Undertaker is another highlight of his career. The two engaged in a memorable rivalry that blended elements of supernatural storytelling with brutal physical encounters. Their feud reached its peak at the Royal Rumble, where Yokozuna defended the WWF Championship against The Undertaker in a casket match, a match type that was The Undertaker's specialty. The match was one of the most dramatic of its time, featuring heavy interference from a host of heels, including Bam Bam Bigelow, Crush, and others, who helped Yokozuna overwhelm The Undertaker. After a chaotic brawl, they succeeded in locking The Undertaker in the casket, allowing Yokozuna to retain the title. However, the match ended with a famous scene where The Undertaker seemingly ascended from the casket, continuing his supernatural persona. The feud between Yokozuna and The Undertaker continued throughout the year and culminated in another casket match at Survivor Series 1994. This time, The Undertaker had Chuck Norris as a special enforcer to prevent interference. The Undertaker emerged victorious, putting an end to their rivalry and symbolically sealing Yokozuna in the casket, marking a significant moment in Yokozuna's career as he transitioned away from the main event scene. Going back again to his partnership with Owen Hart. The partnership began in 1995 when Owen Hart, who was seeking a tag team partner to compete for the WWF Tag Team Championship, chose Yokozuna. The pairing was somewhat unexpected, as Yokozuna's character was still primarily that of a dominant singles competitor, while Owen Hart was known for his technical prowess and agility. However, the combination of Owen's wrestling skill and Yokozuna's sheer power made them a formidable team. Yokozuna and Owen Hart found immediate success as a tag team. They won the WWF Tag Team Championship at WrestleMania 11 by defeating the Smoking Guns Billy and Bart Gunn. The victory established them as one of the top teams in the WWF. They held the titles twice, defending them against various challengers and becoming a staple of the WWF Tag Team division. The dynamic between the two was entertaining, with Owen often playing the brash, arrogant heel who relied on Yokozuna's immense size to back up his boasts. Despite their different styles, they had excellent chemistry in the ring, with Owen's speed and technical ability complementing Yokozuna's power. Their partnership added a new dimension to Yokozuna's character and allowed him to remain a prominent figure in the WWF even as his singles career began to wind down. Towards the end of his WWF career, Yokozuna had a brief but notable feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was rapidly rising as one of the top stars in the company. On August 17th, at Free for All, he lost to Stone Cold Steve Austin after he attempted a bonsai drop on the rope, which broke under his weight, sending him crashing back down for Austin to win. The next night on Raw, Yokozuna faced in WWF champion Shawn Michaels for the title in a losing effort. Afterwards, he only made appearances on house shows. He made his final televised WWF appearance at the Survivor Series on November 17th. Throughout his career, Yokozuna was managed by Mr. Fuji, who played a significant role in shaping his character. Fuji's portrayal of a traditional Japanese manager added authenticity to Yokozuna's sumo wrestler persona, and his devious tactics, such as throwing salt in opponent's eyes, were instrumental in many of Yokozuna's victories. The partnership with Fuji was one of the most iconic wrestler-manager pairings of the era. Later in his career, Yokozuna was also managed by James E. Cornette, one of wrestling's most notorious and skilled talkers. Cornette's addition to Yokozuna's act added another layer of heat to his character, as Cornette's arrogant, fast-talking persona contrasted with Yokozuna's stoic, imposing presence. Cornette often played the mouthpiece for Yokozuna, hyping his matches and engaging in verbal sparring with his opponents. Yokozuna's feuds and partnerships were crucial in defining his career. His rivalries with top stars like Bret Hart, The Undertaker, and Lex Luger were among the most memorable storylines of the early 1990s and helped establish him as a top heel in the WWF. His partnership with Owen Hart demonstrated his versatility as a performer and allowed him to remain relevant even as his role in the company evolved. These feuds and alliances not only solidified Yokozuna's place in wrestling history but also contributed to some of the most iconic moments of his era. Yokozuna's decline and eventual departure from the World Wrestling Federation were marked by a combination of factors, including his increasing weight, health issues, and changing dynamics within the company. These challenges gradually diminished his role in the WWF, leading to a less prominent position on the roster and ultimately his exit from the company. He continued to wrestle on the independent circuit and internationally, but his career never regained the prominence it had during his WWF days. Yokozuna made appearances in various independent promotions around the world, including in Europe and Japan. Despite his declining health, he remained a major attraction due to his name recognition and reputation. However, his performances were limited by his physical condition, and he was no longer the same wrestler who had dominated the WWF. One of his final appearances was in October 1999 at the Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view, where he teamed with fellow NOI family member Samu. By this point, Yokozuna was reportedly over 700 pounds, and his mobility was severely restricted. His performance in this match reflected the toll that his weight and health issues had taken on his body. Yokozuna's life was tragically cut short on October 23, 2000, when he passed away at the age of 34 due to pulmonary edema, a condition often associated with heart failure and complications from obesity. His death was a sobering reminder of the dangers associated with extreme weight and the physical demands of professional wrestling. Despite his untimely death and the decline in his later career, Yokozuna's legacy in professional wrestling remains significant. He is remembered as one of the most dominant and unique characters in the history of the WWF, with his portrayal of a Japanese sumo wrestler despite being Samoan being one of the most memorable gimmicks of the 1990s. His contributions to the wrestling world were recognized when he was posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2012 as part of the class of that year. Yokozuna's legacy also lives on through his family. The Anoa'i family continues to be a major force in professional wrestling, with relatives like The Rock, Roman Reigns, and the Usos carrying on the family tradition. Yokozuna's success paved the way for future generations of Samoan wrestlers, proving that size and heritage could be powerful assets in the world of professional wrestling. Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and want to keep up to date with my new releases, then just hit the subscribe and bell notification. If you liked the video, please press the thumbs up. That way the video will get shared out to others just like you. Thanks for your time, and until next time, so long everybody.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to another video. It's good to see you all today. Today we will be taking a look at the life of the Macho Man Randy Savage, who was one of the most flamboyant wrestlers of the 70s and 80s. There was no heights that Randy couldn't reach. He was, as he said, too hot to handle and too cold to hold. One-time WWF Intercontinental Champion, two-time WWE World Heavyweight Champion. In 1987, he was crowned King of the Ring. In 2015, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as part of the class of 2015. He received recognition from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. His match against Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania 3 in 1987 was named Match of the Year. In 1992, he was awarded the title of Most Unimproved. Let's delve into the life and tragic ending to one of the biggest mega superstars of professional wrestling. I welcome you to the tragic tale of Randy Macho Man Savage. Randy Mario Poffo was born on November 15, 1952 in Columbus, Ohio. He was the firstborn child to Judy and Angelo Poffo, who also had another son, Lanny. Although wrestling wasn't his first choice of sport, as he was a tremendous baseball player in his teens. He was put to the minor leagues at 18 years old, where he played for the Gulf Coast League Cardinals. It was said that he had to retrain to play left-handed when he got injured in his right-hand side throwing shoulder after a collision at the home plate. He would continue to play in the minor leagues until 1974, when he played his last season. By the time he finished up, he had 16 home runs under his belt with 289 games over 4 years. It wouldn't be long before he was introduced to the world of wrestling and give up altogether on the field of baseball, as it was during his off-season in baseball in 1973 that he broke into the wrestling business, wrestling under the name of the Spider, but later took the name Randy Savage after Ole Anderson said he wrestled like a savage. Randy decided then to end his stalled baseball career and join his brother Lanny and father Angelo Poffo, who was a well-known wrestler from the 50s and 60s. His first match was against Golden Boy Paul Christie, but generally wrestled with his father and brother. In 1977, Angelo started his own promotion called ICW, or International Championship Wrestling. He started this promotion because he felt his two sons weren't getting the push he felt they deserved. The Mid-American States promotion ran from 1978 to 1984. Randy would join Jerry the King Lawler's promotion in Memphis with his brother Lanny for a stint while he honed his craft, while feuding with Jerry the King Lawler over the AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship. Randy would also team up with brother Lanny against the likes of the Rock and Roll Express. Early in 1985, Randy would begin this feud again with the King over the title once again before having a loser leaves town on June 7, 1985. Randy lost this match, meaning he would have to leave town. This then allowed him to join Vince McMahon's WWF in 1985, where he would begin his most notable run. In July of that year, he would have his debut against Aldo Marino on the July 6th episode of Championship Wrestling. He would be billed as the top free agent in the country on his first appearance on Tuesday Night Titans, which featured several heel managers including Mr. Fuji and Bobby the Brain Heenan, Classy Freddie Blassie, and Johnny Valiant, whom were all offering their services to Savage. After several appearances and many offers, he eventually chose Miss Elizabeth to be his new manager on the August 24th episode of Championship Wrestling. He was given the gimmick of a crazed, egotistical bully, where he would mistreat Miss Elizabeth constantly and God help anyone who looked at her. Randy would have his first pay-per-view at the Wrestling Classic on November 7th. The promotion's second ever pay-per-view after WrestleMania in 1985 in a 16-man tournament. He would make it to the final after defeating Ivan Putski, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and the Dynamite Kid, before finally being defeated himself by the Junkyard Dog. Later that year, he would begin a feud with the then Intercontinental Champion Tito Santana, where he would win via countout, meaning Santana would keep the belt, as you could only win by pinfall or submission on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. Savage would later win the Intercontinental Championship at the Boston Garden from Santana when he used a foreign object to nail him in the head as Santana tried to lift Savage back into the ring from outside. Because the ref never saw it, he got the win and giving him his first WWF Championship title. Around this time, George the Animal Steel would take a rather unsettling fancy to Miss Elizabeth at a Saturday Night Main Event show, causing Savage to go crazy with jealousy. This would continue all the way to a WrestleMania 2 match with Steel on April 7, 1986, where Savage would defeat Steel in an Intercontinental Championship match. He would later have 2 more championship matches against Steel, winning both and retaining the title. His next feud would be with one of the company's top babyfaces, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, when Savage would crush Steamboat's throat against a guardrail in October, causing him to be out for some time, before returning in time for WrestleMania 3 in March 1987. This was a well-detailed match by a man who liked to pay attention to detail. There was 19 near falls before Savage eventually lost the match to Steamboat, which ended in Steamboat coming out on top and ending the near 14-month reign as Intercontinental Champion. This match at WrestleMania 3 was well laid out and every detail was precise, just the way Savage liked it. This was around the same time Savage liked to experiment with different types of costumes that he used to get made by a designer from Florida called Michael Braun. Savage and Steamboat would continue to have a feud on the house shows, even competing in a steel cage. He would win the King of the Ring tournament in 1987, and despite the company pushing him as a heel, the majority of the fans just absolutely loved this man, so the WWF had no choice but to turn him babyface. Around this time, he would begin a feud with the Honky Tonk Man because Honky was declaring that he was the greatest ever Intercontinental Champion of all time. This would lead to a match for the title on October 3, 1987's episode of Saturday Night Main Event. Despite trying his best, he would lose this opportunity because of outside interference by the Hart Foundation. Although winning the match, Honky would keep the title. During the beating by Honky, Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, Miss Elizabeth would run to the back for help, bringing out Hulk Hogan of all people to assist Savage. After clearing the ring, Hogan and Savage would shake hands and begin their run as the Mega Powers, cementing Savage as a babyface in the process. The Mega Powers would go on to have one of the most memorable tag teams in the history of wrestling despite only actually being together for 1 year. Their first match together would be on a house show in Vancouver on November 10, 1987, where they would team up with Hacksaw Jim Duggan in a six-man match against Ravishing Rick Rude, Harley Race, and King Kong Bundy, where they would come out on top and win the match. They would then go on to have a dark match on January 5, 1988, in Huntsville, Alabama, in a handicap match against Honky Tonk Man and the Hart Foundation, again picking up the win. They would again have another six-man, where Ricky the Dragon Steamboat would join them, where on February 8, 1988, where they would again pick up the win against Honky Tonk Man and the Hart Foundation. This feud would continue into early 1988, having a 5 against 5 in the first ever annual Survivor Series and a couple other matches. Getting into 1988 now, and Savage would have a singles match against the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase on the March 12, 1988 episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, where he would be counted out due to Andre the Giant, who was accompanying DiBiase along with Virgil, slamming him into the corner post while the referee was incapacitated. When the ref came to, Savage was counted out. Hulk Hogan would be the one to rescue Savage from the trio, sparking the Mega Powers' first feud. After Hulk Hogan lost the title when he and Andre the Giant had a match on February 5, 1988 episode of Saturday Night Main Event due to DiBiase buying off the referee Dave Hebner's twin brother Earl. He would pose as Dave and making a very fast 3 count on Hogan. After winning Hogan's belt, Andre would immediately hand it over to DiBiase and declaring himself the champion. WWF President Jack Tunney was having none of it though, and instead of handing the title back to Hogan, he would declare that there would be a 14-man tournament at WrestleMania 4 to crown a new champion. He would give Hogan and Andre a bye into the second round, but everyone else would have to start at round 1. Savage would get to the final round after going up against the Natural Butch Reed in the first, Greg the Hammer Valentine in the second, and the One Man Gang in the third. Making it all the way to his 4th match of the night, he would go up against no other than the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. Andre kept annoying Savage from the outside and not letting him concentrate on the task at hand, so Miss Elizabeth ran backstage to get Hogan's help. Hulk eventually come out and quickly evened up the odds, and as soon as the ref's back was turned, he crept into the ring and struck DiBiase and he back with a chair, leaving him a crumpled mess in the middle of the ring. Savage quickly realized what had happened, so he got up onto the top rope to give his signature flying elbow, pinning the $1 Million Man for the 3 count and becoming the undisputed WWF World Heavyweight Champion. Over the next year, he would defend the title against the likes of Big Boss Man, One Man Gang, and even Andre the Giant, where he would successfully retain on each occasion. At the same time, Savage and Hogan would still be feuding with the Mega Bucks, DiBiase, and Andre, where they would eventually defeat on the new pay-per-view called SummerSlam. Jesse Ventura would be the special guest referee for this one, and he was on the side of the heel team, the Mega Bucks. This was the occasion when the Mega Powers would bring a special weapon to ringside, but it wasn't known what that was. Near the end of the match, Miss Elizabeth got up onto the apron and whisked away her skirt to reveal nothing but a skimpy red pair of panties. The heels were stunned by this, and this allowed the Hogan to get back in the ring and pin DiBiase as Savage pushed Jesse Ventura to the mat and made him make the pin. Once that feud was over, the Mega Powers began a feud with the Twin Towers, consisting of the Big Boss Man and Akeem, who was the former one-man gang. This feud ran all the way to the second annual Survivor Series on November 24, 1988. They had a 5-on-5 match with the Mega Powers finally being victorious. This was the start of the jealousy creeping in, as Savage thought Hogan was showing too much attention towards Miss Elizabeth. This was frustrating Savage, but he kept his cool for now. It didn't help when Miss Elizabeth started managing Hogan as well, and when Savage was accidentally eliminated by Hogan in the January 15, 1989 pay-per-view The Royal Rumble. The last match that the Mega Powers were in was on February 3, 1989, episode of the main event where they faced the Twin Towers again. At one point in the match, Miss Elizabeth got injured as Savage hit her when he was thrown over the top rope to the floor. While Hogan lifted Miss Elizabeth and carried her in his arms, he left Savage to take a beating until Hogan got back to the ring. Savage was so furious that he slapped Hogan when Hogan tried to make a tag. Backstage, Savage attacked Hogan with the championship title, accusing him of lusting after Miss Elizabeth. Brutus the Barber Beefcake tried to intervene and protect his friend before security ran in to separate everyone. This was a definite heel turn for Savage before the April 2, 1989 pay-per-view, WrestleMania 5. Savage would drop the belt to Hogan at the event, ending his 371-day reign with the championship. This match was spectacular, and even though Savage was actually injured at the time. Well, that's all for part 1. I hope you have been enjoying the video. Part 2 will be out soon, so stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching. So we can start off where we left off. Hulk Hogan had just defeated Randy to end his 371-day reign as the WWF World Heavyweight Champion after they had a big falling out over Savage's jealousy concerning Hogan and Miss Elizabeth. At the end of April, Savage replaced his manager with former WWF Women's Champion Sensational Sherri. Randy would team up with the unstoppable human wrecking machine Zeus for him and dropping the big leg on him and pinning him for the 3. Savage and Zeus would demand a rematch, which Hogan and Beefcake accepted, but with one stipulation, that they were inside a steel cage. Hogan and Beefcake would again get the win on the December 27, 1989 no-holds-barred event. In September 1989, King Hacksaw would lose and drop the moniker King to Savage, where he would carry the gimmick with all the flamboyance that we all knew him for. Around this time, he and Hogan would have one more match to end their one-year feud, where Hogan would put his title on the line at the main event on February 23, 1990. Buster Douglas would be the special guest referee, where he'd done a fast count on Savage. This infuriated Savage, so he danced around the ring and then slapped the newly crowned heavyweight boxing champion of the world in the face. Douglas would proceed to punch Randy in the face and flooring him, getting a massive pop from the crowd. After he finished with Hogan, Savage would move on to have a feud with Dusty Rhodes, where they would have a mixed match where Savage would have his new manager Sherri and Dusty would have his new partner Sapphire at WrestleMania 6 on April 1, 1990. Rhodes and Sapphire would win this match, but Randy would get his revenge with a win at SummerSlam to end the feud. Savage would go on to have a feud with the Ultimate Warrior, who had just beaten Hulk Hogan clean in the middle of the ring for his heavyweight championship title. Warrior was refusing to have a match with Savage for the title, providing he was still the champion after the Warrior defended it to Sergeant Slaughter. Even though Sergeant Slaughter promised to give Savage a shot if he was to win against the Ultimate Warrior. It's a bit messy this one, but still entertaining as hell. Before the Warrior v Slaughter match, Savage sent Sherri out to talk to the Warrior before he was set to face Slaughter. She intended to use sexual innuendo to persuade Warrior to change his mind, but this did not work and it infuriated Savage. He was so mad at this point that he waited until the Warrior v Slaughter match had started and went out and smashed his scepter over Warrior's head, causing the glass head of the scepter to smash everywhere, which allowed Slaughter to take the win, crowning him champion in the process. Warrior would finally get his hands on Savage when they both put their wrestling careers on the line at WrestleMania 7 on March 24, 1991. Savage lost this match, which was one of his greatest ever matches he ever had, meaning he would have to retire. This caused Sherri to lose her mind and she started beating on him until Miss Elizabeth, who was in the crowd watching, came to the rescue. She managed to run Sherri off, leading to Savage reuniting with Miss Elizabeth. This got a massive response from the crowd, turning Randy back into a babyface for the first time in nearly 3 years. Even though he was now in retirement, the story would continue as Randy and Miss Elizabeth would be in SummerSlam in August of 1991 as they were to get married. It was dubbed as the match made in heaven, to go along with the match made in hell main event later than him clean out with the urn to the side of the head. Jake the Snake was also there, threatening Miss Elizabeth with the snake that he pulled from the box. Sid Justice ran them off as he came to the rescue. Because Savage was retired, he couldn't do anything about it, so he began a public campaign to get himself reinstated as an active wrestler so he can get revenge on Jake. However, WWF President Jack Tunney declined the request. During the filming of an episode of WWF Superstars of Wrestling on November 23rd, Roberts delivered a promo in the ring to provoke Savage. Once Savage was enticed into the ring, Roberts launched an attack, ultimately restraining Savage with the ropes and then exposing him to a live King Cobra, which bit his arm. According to Hulk Hogan and Jake Roberts on the Pick Your Poison DVD, the snake had a firm grip with its fangs and it was challenging for Jake to remove it from Randy. With support from the fans, Tunney later reinstated Savage and announced a match between Savage and Roberts for this Tuesday in Texas on December 3rd. Savage emerged victorious in that match, but afterwards, Roberts executed the DDT on Savage 3 times, leading to a climactic moment when Roberts slapped Miss Elizabeth. The feud persisted throughout the winter and concluded with a match on the February 8, 1992 episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, which Savage won. Savage then initiated a public rivalry with WWF champion Ric Flair, alleging that Flair had been involved with Savage's wife Miss Elizabeth in the past. Flair went so far as to provide photographic evidence of his alleged relationship with Elizabeth. The culmination of this feud came on April 5th at WrestleMania 8, where Savage emerged victorious, claiming his second WWF Championship title. It is worth noting that during this period, Savage and Elizabeth actually separated in real life. However, the animosity between Savage and Flair persisted, with WWF magazine publishing manipulated photos that appeared to show Savage and Elizabeth together, similar to the ones featuring Elizabeth and Flair. Eventually, it was revealed that Flair had tampered with the pictures. The former couple officially divorced on September 18th, with an announcement appearing in WWF magazine around the same time, which was a rare instance of breaking kayfabe for the WWF at that time. Throughout most of 1992, Savage and his longtime rival The Ultimate Warrior, who had made a return to the WWF at WrestleMania 8, coexisted peacefully. However, tensions resurfaced when it was announced that Warrior would be the new #1 contender for Savage's WWF Championship. Prior to their match, they had several intense exchanges. On August 31st, at SummerSlam, Savage defended his title against The Ultimate Warrior. Although Savage lost the match by countout due to a knee injury caused by Flair and Mr. Perfect, he managed to retain the championship. Following the match, Warrior assisted the badly injured Savage backstage. On the September 14th episode of Primetime Wrestling, which was taped on September 1st, Savage lost the WWF Championship to Flair with interference from Razor Ramon. After losing his title, Savage teamed up with Warrior under the name Ultimate Maniacs. Despite being injured, Savage supported Warrior in his quest to dethrone Flair. They faced Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase, and Erwin R. Shyster for the WWF Tag Team Championship on the November 8, 1992 episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. Although Money Incorporated retained their titles due to a countout, Savage and Warrior were set to take on Flair and Ramon at Survivor Series on November 25th. However, Warrior was fired from the WWF before the event, prompting Savage to choose Mr. Perfect, Flair's executive consultant, as his new partner. Initially dismissing the idea, Perfect was provoked by Bobby Heenan's insinuations that he could never wrestle at his previous level. In the end, Savage and Perfect defeated Flair and Ramon via disqualification. When Monday Night Raw debuted in January 1993, Savage primarily took on the role of a color commentator. At the Royal Rumble on January 24th, he finished as the runner-up in the match, being eliminated by Yokozuna. Returning to pay-per-view on November 24th at Survivor Series, Savage substituted for Mr. Perfect. He also competed in the 1994 Royal Rumble on January 22nd, but was eliminated by Crush, which led to a Falls Count Anywhere match on March 20th at WrestleMania 10. In this match, Savage emerged victorious over Crush. Additionally, Savage made occasional appearances in Jim Cornette's Smoky Mountain Wrestling promotion in May and made his final WWF pay-per-view appearance on August 29th at SummerSlam. where he served as the master of ceremonies. Savage's last WWF match took place during a tour in Germany on September 13, 1994, when he teamed up with Bret Hart to defeat Owen Hart and Jim Neidhart in Rostock. As October 1994 came to a close, Savage's WWF contract expired, prompting him to sign with their rival promotion, World Championship Wrestling, WCW. The Mega Powers reunion, 1994 to 1995, occurred when Savage made his debut for WCW on the December 3, 1994 episode of Saturday Night. During this appearance, he mentioned the complex love-slash-hate dynamic between him and Hulk Hogan and expressed his aspiration to become the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. At Starrcade on December 27th, Savage came to Hogan's aid, saving him from an assault by the Three Faces of Fear. The two legendary wrestlers then shook hands, reaffirming their friendship and rivalry. Another notable victory came at Super Brawl V on February 19, 1995, where Savage and Sting triumphed over Avalanche and Big Bubba Rogers. However, things took a turn at Uncensored on March 19, as Savage faced Avalanche and won the match through disqualification when a disguised fan, who was later revealed to be Ric Flair, attacked him. This incident ignited a bitter feud between Savage and Flair. The animosity escalated further on May 21st at Slamboree when Flair targeted Savage's father, Angelo Poffo, following the main event where Savage and Hogan defeated Flair and Vader. Savage took part in the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship tournament, emerging victorious against the Butcher in the initial round and stunning Steve Austin in the quarterfinals. He then intervened in Flair's match against Alex Wright, assaulting Flair and causing Wright to be disqualified. This led to a tournament semi-final where the winner would face the victor of the Sting and Ming match for the title at the Great American Bash. However, Savage and Flair's semi-final match never occurred due to their backstage brawl prior to the match, resulting in both of them being eliminated from the tournament. On June 18th at the event, Savage was defeated by Flair after Flair took Angelo's cane and struck Savage with it. They had a rematch on July 16th at Bash at the Beach, where Savage emerged victorious against Flair in a lifeguard lumberjack match. Later that year, during the storyline where Arn Anderson and Ric Flair turned on each other, Flair attempted to recruit Savage as his partner to face Anderson and Brian Pillman in a tag match. However, Savage declined the offer due to their past rivalry and Flair's previous attack on Savage's father. At Fall Brawl on September 17th, in a War Games match, Savage, Hogan, Lex Luger, and Sting emerged victorious against the Dungeon of Doom, consisting of Kamala, the Zodiac, the Shark, and Ming. At Halloween Havoc on October 29th, Savage triumphed over Luger. During World War III on November 26th, Savage achieved his first WCW World Heavyweight Championship by emerging victorious in the inaugural 60-man three-ring battle royal. However, on December 27th at Starrcade, he relinquished the title to Flair. Prior to that, Savage had triumphed over Hiroshi Tenzan earlier in the evening. On the January 22, 1996 episode of Nitro, Savage reclaimed the WCW World Heavyweight Championship from Flair for the second time. This period also saw Savage bringing Elizabeth back as his manager in WCW. At Super Brawl 6 on February 11th, Savage defended his title against Flair in a steel cage match, but ultimately lost it when Elizabeth betrayed him by allowing Flair to strike him with one of her high-heeled shoes. Flair alleged that Elizabeth had given him a significant portion of Savage's money from their divorce settlement, which he used to establish a VIP section at Nitro events. At Uncensored on March 24th, Savage and Hogan emerged victorious in a Doomsday Cage match against Flair, Arn Anderson, Ming, the Barbarian, Luger, the Taskmaster, Z-Gangsta, and the Ultimate Solution. During Slamboree on May 19th, Savage and Flair joined forces for the Lord of the Ring tournament. They triumphed over Anderson and Eddie Guerrero but were forced to forfeit to Public Enemy, Johnny Grunge and Rocco Rock, after Savage attacked Flair as payback for Flair's earlier assault. 96, the formation of the New World Order, and NWO took place at Bash at the Beach on July 7th when Hulk Hogan betrayed Savage, Sting, and Lex Luger to join forces with the Outsiders. Comprised of former WWF wrestlers Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Following their inception, Savage became one of the NWO's primary adversaries. For months, he clashed with Hogan and faced numerous attacks from the NWO. On September 15th at Fall Brawl, the Giant defeated Savage. Finally, at Halloween Havoc on October 27th, Savage had his long-awaited showdown with Hogan for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. However, the Giant's interference led to Savage's defeat after being chokeslammed. Subsequently, Savage parted ways with WCW because he was unable to negotiate a new agreement with the company. Savage made his return to WCW on the January 20, 1997 episode of Nitro, taking control of the show. He claimed to have been unfairly treated and refused to leave the ring until Sting appeared. Eventually, Sting showed up, and the two left together. In the following Nitro episodes, Savage and Sting were seen as free agents, observing events from the crowd. At one point, WCW President Eric Bischoff, who was also a member of NWO, informed Savage that his WCW career was over and he could only return as part of the NWO. On February 23rd, at Super Brawl 7, Savage shocked everyone by leaving Sting's side and joining the NWO. He aided Hogan in defeating Roddy Piper. The next night, Savage was reunited with Elizabeth, who had joined the NWO during his absence from WCW. Savage then began a feud with Diamond Dallas Page and his wife Kimberly. On March 16th, at Uncensored, Savage emerged victorious in a triangle elimination match with the NWO. However, he suffered a loss to Page in a no disqualification match on April 6th at Spring Stampede. But on June 15th, at the Great American Bash, Savage managed to defeat Page in a Falls Count Anywhere match. In addition, Savage also participated in a tag team match at Bash at the Beach on July 13th. He faced a loss against the Giant at Road Wild on August 9th. Furthermore, on September 14th at Fall Brawl, Savage and Scott Hall were defeated by Page and Luger. Ultimately, their feud came to an end with a Las Vegas death match on October 26th at Halloween Havoc, which Savage emerged victorious from. On January 24, 1998, Savage was defeated by Luger at Sold Out. Luger emerged victorious again in a rematch on February 22nd at Super Brawl 8. On March 15th, Savage faced Hogan in a steel cage match at Uncensored, which ended without a clear winner. After Hogan's unsuccessful attempt to regain the NWO title from Sting, it was Savage's turn to challenge for the championship on April 19th at Spring Stampede. Hogan, believing he was the only deserving member of the NWO to hold the WCW World Heavyweight Championship as the stable's leader, tried to prevent Savage from winning. Despite tearing his ACL and his knee during the match, Savage managed to defeat Sting with the assistance of Nash, securing his third WCW World Heavyweight Championship. The following night on Nitro, Hogan once again faced Savage for the title and appeared to have the match won, but for the second consecutive night, Nash intervened and powerbombed Hogan. However, Bret Hart interfered and attacked Savage, ensuring Hogan's victory. Subsequently, Savage joined forces with Nash and others to establish the NWO Wolfpack, breaking away from Hogan's faction. At the Slamboree event on May 17th, Savage was defeated by Hart through submission. On June 14th, at the Great American Bash, Savage joined forces with Piper and faced off against Hogan and Hart, but ultimately lost by submission. Following the match, Savage went on to wrestle Piper in the next bout, which resulted in a quick submission victory for Piper. After the Nitro event the following night, Savage took a break from the company to recover from multiple knee surgeries. He made only one more appearance in 1998, when he assisted Ric Flair in defeating Eric Bischoff for the WCW presidency on the December 28th episode of Nitro. With the NWO member The Giant interfering on Bischoff's behalf, Savage entered the ring wearing his NWO shirt. However, he deceived everyone by low-blowing and clotheslining The Giant out of the ring before removing the shirt and leaving. Team Madness, 1999 to 2000, Team Madness in April 1999. Savage made a comeback with a fresh appearance and theme music. He sported a sleek ponytail, earrings, and a new villainous attitude while still maintaining his connection with the fans. He also introduced his new valet, Gorgeous George. His first move was serving as the guest referee in the main event at Spring Stampede on April 11th, which Diamond Dallas Page won. Shortly after, Savage began interfering in DDP's matches to ensure that Page retained the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. However, when Kevin Nash won the title on May 9th at Slamboree, Savage set his sights on capturing the championship for himself. Around that time, Medusa and Miss Madness joined Savage as his other two valets, forming Team Madness. At the Great American Bash on June 13th, Sid Vicious returned to WCW and assisted Savage in attacking Kevin Nash. This resulted in a tag team match taking place on July 11th at Bash at the Beach between Nash and Sting, going up against Savage and Sid Vicious. The stipulation was that whoever scored the winning fall would become the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Savage emerged victorious, capturing his fourth and final WCW World Heavyweight Championship by pinning Nash. However, Savage's reign as champion was short-lived, as he lost the title the following night on Nitro to a returning Hollywood Hogan. Nash interfered in the match and delivered a powerbomb to Savage, mirroring the previous year's situation where Nash had attacked Hogan to aid Savage in retaining his title, albeit unsuccessfully. The dissolution of Team Madness began slowly as Medusa and Miss Madness started quarreling over who was to blame for Savage's title loss. Eventually, Savage fired both of them and embarked on a feud with Dennis Rodman, triumphing over him at Road Wild on August 14th. Savage vanished from WCW programming after his clash with Rodman and went on to make 2 additional appearances. The first occurred on the October 25, 1999 episode of Nitro, where he entered the ring alongside Gorgeous George and discussed passing the torch to the next generation. His second and final WC West appearance took place on the May 3, 2000 episode of Thunder. There, Savage rejoined the Millionaires Club, a collective comprised of Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and other seasoned wrestlers. He assisted them in the conclusion of a 41-man battle royal. Although Savage declared his intention to assist the veteran group in eliminating the young New Blood faction, he did not resurface in WCW before its eventual closure the following year. On November 7, 2004, Savage made a comeback to the world of professional wrestling during NWA, Total Nonstop Action's TNA Victory Road pay-per-view event. His return involved a confrontation with Jeff Jarrett. He then made his debut on Impact on November 19th, where he confronted the Kings of Wrestling, Jarrett, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. In the following week's show, Savage led a group attack on them. On December 5th, at Turning Point, Savage teamed up with Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles to defeat the Kings of Wrestling in what would be his final match. However, Savage left TNA on December 8th due to disagreements over the proposed finish of a main event for Jarrett's NWA World Heavyweight Championship at Final Resolution. On the morning of May 20, 2011, Savage was driving his Jeep Wrangler near his residence in Seminole, Florida, with his spouse seated beside him when he lost consciousness and collided with a tree. Emergency medical personnel arrived promptly and discovered his lifeless body at the scene, at the age of 58. Both Savage and his wife were wearing seatbelts. His wife sustained only minor physical injuries as a result of the accident. An autopsy conducted by the medical examiner's office revealed that he had an enlarged heart and advanced coronary artery disease, with his arteries being more than 90% narrowed, leading to a sudden heart attack. The substances detected in his system included a prescribed painkiller and a small amount of alcohol. Savage had never received treatment for any heart-related issues, and there was no evidence to suggest that he was aware of his heart condition. The official cause of death was recorded as atherosclerotic heart disease. Following his death, Savage's body was cremated 5 days later, and his ashes were interred beneath a cherished tree on his property in Largo, Florida, close to where his mother resided. 10 days prior to his passing, he had asked his brother to scatter the ashes of his beloved dog in the same location. Savage explained to his brother that the reason for wanting him to remember that specific spot was because he desired his ashes to be scattered there too. Randy Macho Man Savage, you will never be forgotten. Your work in the wrestling ring has inspired many a wrestler over the years. Rest in peace, my friend.
Some folks argue politics,